Right, so while I'm out here, I thought I'd better talk about this camera again, and I'll put up some footage now, but I basically had a bit of a torrid time in Stourhead filming the beginning of the video for this particular camera. I basically decided last minute that I was going to do a video on the camera, so I ended up using my phone, and it was a little bit shaky to say the least. And then when I started actually using this camera, it wasn't really playing ball, so I had to abandon the photo walk with this camera, the Fed 3, and yeah, and then go home and look at the problem and see whether I could sort it out. Right, so the problem I was experiencing is, obviously this is a very, very old camera, and it's a Soviet version of Leica, and they basically copied the design, and it's kind of evolved a little bit since they got their hands on the design and in trying to make it a better or a cheaper product to make. And as such, it probably hasn't been maintained in quite a while. And what happened is basically the lens, because it hadn't been used for so long, it just kind of seized up, and every time I tried to adjust the focus, it ended up just coming off the mount, because it's an L39 mount, which is like the Leica mount, or the old Leica mount, and you do all your aperture and your focusing on the rings on the lens itself. It does seem to be working a lot better at the moment, but basically I just took it home, just used it basically. I was just kept on opening up the focus ring to the extremities, and that does seem to have loosened it a little bit, or hopefully loosened it enough for me to see whether the camera is working, because there is film loaded into it. I bought some Kentmere Pan 100 35mm film and loaded it in. Here's me thinking the only noise you could be able to hear on this video would be the raging river behind me, but there's a tractor in the field behind, which you can probably pick up now. Then I've heard shooting, and then of course you've got the rubbish tip and machinery noises that way, so not as idyllic as I was anticipating. Anyway, it's a rangefinder camera, so the focus is actually coupled on the lens to the rangefinder in the camera itself. So basically when you turn the focus ring, you can see a patch in the viewfinder, and you just have to line the image that you're seeing up with the patch to make sure that it's in focus. That's a theory anyway. It obviously depends on how accurate the rangefinder is. So yeah, so I'll be interested to see what results I managed to get from this camera. Like I said, I only managed about 4 or 5 shots to start here before the focus ring just completely seized and it wouldn't work any longer. And because it's only one lens, this is a 52mm f2.8, the scene behind me is a little bit too, it needs a wider lens, so I'm not going to be able to take any shots with the film camera here. But I thought I just wanted to do this introductory video again, because yeah, it just didn't work as well as I was anticipating at Stourhead. But like I said, I also took the Fuji XE1 camera because I wanted to take an image with digital, take an image with film, and compare the results, because I just like videos where I compare the results of my cameras. It helps me to decide whether I want to keep them or not. But this particular Fed 3 actually only cost me about £25 before Christmas, including the lens, so it wasn't a massive investment, and I was kind of happy as well if it didn't work, because it just looks so damn cool. And it's completely metal, no batteries at all, completely mechanical operation. Only has shutter speeds up to 1/500th of a second. And one thing to remember with these particular cameras, and I think the Zorkis as well, is you have to remember to almost cock the shutter before changing the shutter speed, else you risk damaging the components inside. Even though I haven't used this camera a great deal, what I've noticed is the aperture ring on the very front of the lens is clickless. So you've got to be really careful, especially with this lens where it takes so much effort to turn the focus ring, that you don't knock your aperture off, because obviously it hasn't got a light meter. So you do your light meter recording, you transfer the details to the camera itself, you focus, and then I've done it before, and I'm pretty sure I did it the last image. I just knocked the front ring, and yeah, all of a sudden you're shooting at f22 as opposed to f4 or f5.6. Just to add as well, like I have used Kentmere Pan 100 in 120 film, and I've been very impressed, hence why I wanted to try it in the 35mm variant, because I have tried Kentmere's Pan 400 film before, and even though it did give me some good results, I wouldn't pick it again over HP5 Plus. So I'd be really interested to see how the Kentmere Pan 100 film performs here and in other cameras that I've bought, because there isn't really a lot of ISO 100 films available at present, certainly not ones which are as affordable as Kentmere here. Right, so I'm back down at the mill with the Fed, and thankfully I've managed to finish a roll of film in the camera at present, because whilst I did manage to get the lens freed up in that I could focus, and I do actually think, sitting here now actually, that when it's cold the lens definitely does struggle to focus without tearing your fingers to pieces, but now it's a bit warmer, it does seem to again move a little bit more freely. But anyway, I think if I was to use this camera again, I will probably look at replacing the lens. The Jupiter 8s, which were on similar cameras to these back in the day, mainly on the Zorky Leica copies, they're supposed to be very good, so I think I'll probably try one of those lenses with this particular camera. And I probably will be using it again, because I developed the film from the camera this morning quite successfully, and although I did have to use a 22-degree temperature with my HC110B dilution developer, but looking at the results, they do seem to have come out quite well. I haven't scanned the images in yet, but just looking at the negatives drying, they do look particularly successful and well spaced. So I managed to get a good 24-25 exposures from my roll of Kentmere Pan 100 35mm film this time around. So anyway, I've talked enough about this particular camera. Yeah, I'll put up my favourite images from the roll, and where I did manage to capture a similar composition using my digital camera, then I will put that up side by side as well at the same time. And then if I'm absolutely bowled over with any of the compositions, I'll talk about them back in the office, but failing that, I'll just finish with this montage of images now. Right, I'm back here again, surprise, surprise. And I've just finished another roll of film in the Feds, because I don't know, because if you were paying attention earlier on in this film, I'm gonna have to move because it's pretty wild down here at the mill today after a lot of rain. Like, I'll just switch you around a minute. And it's pretty rough. Right, so I just stand here a little bit away from the mill because it's pretty noisy today. But like I said, I've just finished a second roll of Kentmere Pan 100 in the Fed 3 here. And you might notice I've had to change the lens. This one here, the focusing is so smooth. Whereas the lens I had on here before, the Industar 26M, it was so stiff to focus. Like every time you try to focus, it would literally come off the mount of the camera. So it just made it so difficult to do. So I ended up buying a cheap camera, untested camera on eBay where this lens was attached. And so it was a bit of a gamble. And we'll find out from the results whether that paid off, because when I did get it and start using it, I did notice that it does have what appears to be fungus growing inside the lens. It's not completely gone yet. You can just see some kind of spindly marks on the outsides of the lens. So because I saw that, what I decided to do was take the Fed to another National Trust property here in the UK called Montage House, and what I decided to do was first take a picture with this lens here, which is a Jupiter 8, another old Soviet USSR lens, and then struggle with my old Industar 26M lens, which I've got here. So then I put this one on the camera and struggled to focus. It's really bizarre because when I turn the focusing ring here, it turns really well, but as soon as I put it on the camera, it just seems to seize up. And anyway, I took the same scene with the Jupiter, same scene with the Industar, just to compare the two lenses, as well as seeing if any or what effect that fungus in the lens of the Jupiter lens has on the final image. And I've just developed the roll today, so I'll put the images up now and then I'll just talk about the results back in the office, just because I'll be interested as well, just to see whether the fungus in the Jupiter has had an impact, or whether I just prefer the look of the images from the Industar 26M, and whether I should just keep an eye out for a replacement lens like this, but just one where the focusing ring seems to be a bit smoother. And like I said, it's really odd because at the moment it's twisting really well, but I know as soon as the temperature starts to drop, it does seem to seize up a little bit more than it is now. But yeah, but it definitely is quite a cool lens. Just it's an L39 mount, so it just twists off the camera, and it's so tiny. And this one as well has got a lovely aperture ring on the end, and I don't find that I knock it half as much as I do with the Industar ring. There is a little bit more of a resistance, I feel. It's clickless, so it still can be quite knocked quite easily without realising, but it is certainly better than the Industar one. And I'll just put that back on the camera now. Yeah, so yeah, see what I mean? It, like, you put it on, and then as soon as you start to focus it, you have the risk of it just twisting off the camera, and it's hit and miss when it happens. Ironically, it happens when I'm using the camera, and it just, yeah, it's so hard to turn when it is on the camera. So yeah, it's not in my imagination. Yeah, see, it just twists off the camera so easily. Whereas this one, just when you mount it, it just stays on there, and the focus ring just operates great. So I really do hope that the images from this lens turn out okay, because it is so much easier to use in operation. So yes, I'll just put up some favourite images that I took with the second roll in the Fed 3, and then at the end I'll put up those images that were taken with both the Jupiter and the Industar lenses, just so I can see as well whether there's any difference, and like I said, what the effect of that fungus is on the lens, because you can't see it that well in all situations. It's just when you get certain light on the lens, you can just see there's something inside the lens that shouldn't be there. But I doubt really that will have, because I'm struggling to see it, I doubt that will have much of an impact on the image. It will just be the different optical designs that have an influence on what the final image looks like. So yeah, so let's put those images up now, and I'll talk again in the office and go through some of the results. Right, so as it's such a glorious day today here in the UK as we approach spring, I thought I didn't really want to finish up this video in the office, so look where I am again, down at the mill. Anyway, so this is going to be a quick wash up with my first experiences with the Fed 3 camera here. And as I alluded to earlier in the video, certainly with the first roll, I preferred in many cases the digital comparators that I offered up, especially this one here with the Fujifilm X-E1 that I took out at Stour Head. And I actually converted this one in Lightroom and then in Silver FX Pro. Don't get me wrong though, there were some close thought images with the film camera, especially those that I took at Moodford Bay in Dorset and again at Stour Head, even though they didn't do quite as well compared to the digital cameras, they still did offer up some interesting compositions. And frankly, with this first roll, I was just glad that they came out looking okay. With respect to the second roll of film that I shot, and this time was the one where I changed out the original Industar 26mm lens with the Jupiter 8 lens, I started to see some issues, as you could probably see yourself from those images. I had no idea what those issues were because they occurred when I used both lenses, so that ruled out that aspect, and it looked to me like it was a reflection in the rangefinder, or the rangefinder was or some kind of internal reflection was showing in the images, which I was surprised about because most of those shots were captured on dull days where I didn't even see the sun, so there wasn't really a lot of strong light in the scene to create any kind of reflection. So yeah, I'm really stumped as to what those issues could be caused from. So if anyone's got any ideas, I'd be grateful if you could put them in the comments below. I guess what I did experience with this camera was that the results were generally getting worse the more I used it. So maybe it's just the fact that this is an old camera getting on for about 60 years old potentially, and it needs a good service. Anyway, regardless of that, I did enjoy shooting with the Fed, and it certainly was easier when like I said, I changed the lens to the Jupiter lens. It was quite clear when you're looking through the rangefinder to see when the images are lined up so that you were in focus, and that from my images seemed to work really well. I have no problems with the accuracy of the viewfinder, even when I was shooting up quite close, like this image here in Montage. But one thing to note, like I said earlier, you've got to remember to cock the shutter before changing the shutter speed, and for those of us who wear glasses, you've got to really watch yourself on the viewfinder because it's a metal rim around the area that you actually zoom in on, and it has got actually quite a handy diopter built in to the viewfinder, so that's quite handy. It's probably not strong enough for my eyesight, mind. So yeah, it was really fun to use. It's just a shame perhaps that the results are starting to look a little bit worse than when I first started using the camera. I also really enjoyed the look of the Kentmere Pan 100 film, easily probably the cheapest film that you can buy at present, certainly here in the UK, and I'm looking forward to trying out the other rolls that I have with perhaps my more reliable cameras. So yeah, I'll be really interested to see how my Olympus, my Konica, and now my Pentax 35mm film cameras will do with that type of film. So yeah, so that's about it for this video. For the reasons I mentioned, I don't think I'm going to be rushing to use this camera again, and I'm not really sure it's going to be worth a service, because like I said, I only paid about £26 for the body and this lens, and then about another £30 for the Jupiter 8 lens. So is it worth paying £120 plus to get this looked at? I'm not quite so sure, but regardless of that, you can't deny that it does look good on the shelf. So that's all I have for this video. So as always, thanks for watching. Bye for now.